What began last week when Columbia University students in the US refused to end their protest against Israel's war with Hamas had turned into a much larger movement as students across the United States set up encampments, occupied buildings, and ignored demands to leave. Protests have been bubbling for months but kicked into a higher gear after more than 100 pro-Palestinian demonstrators who had camped out on Columbia's Upper Manhattan campus were arrested. Now, dozens more protesters have been arrested at other campuses since, and many now face charges of trespassing or disorderly conduct. Take a look at the dramatic visuals playing out on your screens. With tensions at Columbia continuing to run high and some students afraid to set foot on the campus, officials said the Ivy League school will switch to hybrid learning for the rest of the semester, which will be finished by the end of next week. Now, as far as New York is concerned, at the New York University, police said 133 protesters were taken into custody late on Monday, and all had been released, with summons, though, to appear in court on disorderly conduct charges. Meanwhile, police arrested 60 protesters, including 47 students at Yale University, after they refused to leave an encampment on a plaza at the center of the Yale campus. Yale's president has said that protesters had declined an offer to end the demonstration and meet with trustees. After several warnings, school officials determined the situation was no longer safe, so police cleared the encampment and made arrests. As far as Harvard University in Massachusetts is concerned, they tried to stay a step ahead of protests by locking most gates into the famed Howard Yard and limiting access to those with school identification. In fact, the school has also posted signs that warn against setting up tents or tables on campus without permission. But you know, since the war in Gaza began, colleges and universities have struggled to balance safety with free speech rights and many long-tolerated protests, but now officials are doling out more heavy-handed discipline.
College protests continue to expand in the U.S. ever since multiple pro-Palestinian protesters were arrested at Columbia University's campus for setting up encampment and calling the university to divest all academic and economic stakes in Israel. In support of those who were arrested at Columbia, student groups in many universities, including Yale and New York University, began their own demonstrations. In response, officials are monitoring the situation closely. On Monday, more than 100 NYPD officers entered NYU's encampment and made over 130 arrests, although an official number is yet to be tallied. The university said it had warned the crowd to leave and called the police after the scene became disorderly. New York City's Mayor Eric Adams said that the city is working closely with the school to mitigate the crisis. He also added that a police officer was assaulted during the NYU protest, but that the helmet he was wearing protected him. He called the protesters who want to exercise their right to free speech to refrain from any violence. Students at MIT and UC Berkeley also set up tents to protest against the Israel-Hamas war. Columbia made its classes virtual until the semester ended, and Harvard closed its doors to people unaffiliated with the university. With only a few weeks left of the semester, many universities are struggling to contain the protests and mitigate tensions on campuses.